Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Huh. Sounds like an important thing to be talking about, especially with everything going on right now. And, we did say in the last episode we were going to be talking about peacemaking, so let's go ahead and do that. Blessings from the One Life to you and yours. My name is Charlie. I am a non-binary sci-fi fantasy author, and I've actually thought about whether I should still be introing myself that way, or if I should be saying that I'm a druid, I'm a dree, whatever the word is that is most appropriate to the function that I place. But I am a sci-fi fantasy author, and I feel that is so core to my identity that I should still be saying it. I'd like to know what y'all think. How should I be introing myself in here? And how should I be introducing my wonderful husband, Brian?
Yo, I tried to mix it up today. I introed myself different.
So today we are going to be talking about a very important topic, and that is blessed are the peacemakers. And especially if you're coming from the Druid tradition, the Christian tradition. Yes, even those of us who come from the Christian tradition. In the Beatitudes, in the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus delivers the new law, the new way that we are supposed to live, one of the things that he says at the very beginning is, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." It's something that is shockingly lacking in pop Christianity today. It is something that is very alive and well within modern Druidry to a certain degree.
For those out there that like to think of self first, just thinking about the second most important thing Jesus said for all of us to do unto others as we would have done unto ourselves. We deserve peace. We should have peace. So give peace to others so that you yourself will be deserving of that peace. As for the Christians out there, those that are following Christ's teachings, should be, doing and behaving regarding peace.
The golden rule, the heart of compassion, the proof, if anybody needed it, that Jesus was a Pharisee. If you don't understand that, just real quick, that statement, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, actually comes from Hillel, who is the founder of the Pharisees, who, according to legend, went to draw water from a well and was asked by a Roman centurion in a mocking way, "If you can explain to me the law while standing on one foot, I will convert to Judaism." And Hillel reportedly stood on one foot and said, "That which you find hateful, do not do that to others. The rest is commentary." And put his foot down, finished collecting his water, and said, "I'll see you in the synagogue on Sabbath." And that is the heart of the original movement of the Pharisees, also why Jesus talked about them so much. Peacemaking is core to this idea of compassion. It is something that we really don't talk about enough when we're talking about compassion. So what is peacemaking is different from strifing. I think a lot of us get confused in that we think that peace is the aftermath or how you resolve war or conflict. And it is. But peacemaking actually starts a lot more subtle than that. This is why looking at a phrase like "blessed are the peacemakers" is so important. In the first wave of Christian writers, Origen, the ever controversial Origen, who was a heretic, then not a heretic, then a heretic again, then not a heretic, and ambiguous after that point as to where the church landed on him, in his commentaries on the Beatitudes, says that "blessed are the peacemakers" actually involves being able to read the scriptures and make peace between the many ideas that are present within them. This is the heart of peacemaking. We have forgotten as a civilization, as a society, what it actually means to live in community. If you're only thinking about making peace when there is strife, when there is war, when there is conflict, then you're not actively engaging in the act of peacemaking. Peacemaking is learning to live with those of differing opinions. Peacemaking is learning to live with those who have different ideas about what might be the best path forward. Peacemaking is consensus building. Peacemaking is finding that road that we can walk together, not just how to smooth over our conflicts and ending our fights.
A couple tools I found very helpful, both understanding and executing that aspect of peacemaking, ties back to our previous episode where we touched a little on nonviolence. It's being very mindful of that when interacting with others. Is this action a violation of another's free will? Anytime that answer is yes, then
The action is suspect,
yeah,
not stopped.
that's true. That's true. It's suspect and should be highly scrutinized at that point because violent acts are going to generally result in violation of peace and not a peacemaking act. The second one is letting go. The art of letting go is so vital to peacemaking, especially when interacting with others. A lot of times, others will perpetrate violence upon yourself, and it's one of the powers of forgiveness that I think a lot of people don't understand. The first thing, the healing that it does to yourself. Once again, it goes back to, in a way, it's a selfish act, but it helps to let go once you realize that you're doing so much more harm to yourself holding on to that pain, to that violation that was perpetrated upon your individual. The healing that results from that letting go is worth so much more, and it makes peace.
So the reason I interrupted Brian there, in that it's not always allowing everybody to do what they want, comes down to what's known as the paradox of tolerance. You cannot tolerate intolerance. This sounds like such a confusing thing because if you're intolerant of intolerance, then you're being intolerant, so you shouldn't tolerate being intolerant of intolerance. It's a paradox. It sounds like a loop that's bending back onto itself. The problem is that when intolerance is allowed to have free reign, it will take advantage of a tolerant space to overwhelm it and push out marginalized voices, to push out those who would be likely to speak or feel unable to speak or uncomfortable speaking. You have to weed out those intolerant ideas, those intolerant aspects of your public permissible discourse, or you're letting them win. And that really goes against the grain of a lot of what we think when we're talking about free speech and free will, all of those things, that we just will defeat them in the marketplace of ideas, we'll debate them into obscurity, we will show with facts and logic and reason that their intolerance is wrong. And that actually isn't how the human psyche works. So there are two main factors that come to play in our minds when we're dealing with the world. One, the world is an illusion. I'm not saying that in a woo-woo sort of way. You have never interacted with the real world. You have interacted with a model built in your brain of what the real world looks like. There is a signal processing delay between what you see and the processing time it takes for you to see it. There's a delay in the sounds that you hear and your brain processing that information into sound. There's a delay in the sensations you feel and your brain processing. It would create a cluttered mess because the signal processing delay is actually different between your sight, your sound, smell, hearing, touch, all of your senses. And it would create a cacophony in your brain where you would hear a thing, then smell a thing, then see a thing, and they would be disjointed and very broken in your brain. So the way our brains actually work is they build a model, a best guess at what we're actually seeing. Our eyes actually dart around and scan little bits of the environment around us. We don't actually see a full perspective in front of us when we're looking. We're actually looking at a little bit over here, a little bit over there, a little bit over here, and a little bit over there. Your brain is filling in everything else on its best guess as to what is there based on what it knows is usually there and what it last saw when it looked into that area. That's one of the reasons why at night you see a coiled hose on the ground and your brain goes, snake? And no, it's just a coiled hose. It's just your garden hose. It's fine. But it's safer for you to assume maybe danger. So when your brain just kind of gets a glance at there's something coiled and shining over there, I'm going to assume this is a snake. You didn't actually see a snake. Your brain created the illusion of a snake in the little mental model that you have inside of your head. Once you understand that's actually how your brain functions and how you're actually experiencing the world, then some of the other problems come in. We weight information based off of the information we already have. So the first time you hear something, you might take it with a grain of salt. You might try to be skeptical about it. But the next bit of information you have will be weighed against the previous information that you picked up. So if the first information that you picked up was biased, wrong, and in error, hopefully you will see the distinctions between the two and correct that initial thought that was put into your mind. That's not always what works. And this is why the paradox of tolerance exists. When the first time you hear about trans people, queer people, any ethnic group that you are not familiar with, any religious group that you are not familiar with, any subculture, and just in general that you're not familiar with, if that was a biased recounting of that group, then that bias has been seeded first and has to be overcome for you to get over it. Even if you don't think you internalized it, it's there and it's part of the weighting when you are judging new information coming in.
It goes back to that farming analogy that is so relevant in so many things because it plants the initial seed. Then next time, should you hear an anecdote, maybe a personal story of one experience that might not be relevant to the entire group, but is negative, if there was already a previous bias, that ground, that soil is already fertile and fertilized and prepped. So then that seed can grow much more easily.
We also have a filter in our brain that tends to seek out information that is in accord with what we already know and believe. We tend to just ignore and not hear, see, or take in information that is different from what we already know or believe. A big part of peacemaking, a huge part of peacemaking, is recognizing that cognitive bias, that you have it. It is just how your brain is wired. And accepting that from the get-go, then using that to your own advantage. So I have this bias built into my brain. Let me be extra skeptical about things that I don't know a lot about. Not that you're giving deference to or bending the knee to others on those subjects, but maybe if a doctor tells you something and you are not a doctor, that doctor has specialized knowledge in medicine that you do not have. So maybe their opinion should be weighted heavier than your opinion on that issue. Maybe a physicist who has actually studied physics and understands all the equations, maybe they should be weighted a little bit higher. Again, not giving absolute deference to, not giving obedience to. I think obedience is the opposite of peacemaking. Obedience is a form of violation of will, where you are subjugating your will to another. Allowing yourself to take in that knowledge and be much more willing to test your own biases and test your own preconceived notions. Because that really is the heart of peacemaking. A lot of people, like we said at the very beginning, think of peacemaking as, I have conflict with so-and-so, so I need to make peace with them. Or this group has conflict with that group, we should make peace between them. Like we said in the Harvesting Peace episode, peacemaking requires you to start at home. It has to start within. If you have conflict with someone, it's probably because they hurt you, it's probably because something was done or the perception of harm happened. Because way too often, it's the perception of harm and not actual harm that causes a lot of conflicts, or is at least the initial root of cause of a lot of conflict between people. When you are starting from a place of, well, that person can never be trusted because they blah, 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 blah. We shouldn't always give others the benefit of the doubt. As Maya Angelou said, when somebody tells you who they are, you should trust them the first time.
As I like to say, it is a benefit. It is something that, yes, is given. Yes, it can be earned. But like a benefit, it can also be lost and or taken away.
It's also important for us to realize that we may have misunderstood the initial interaction, whatever the initiating cause of the conflict was. And making peace with just that concept. I might be wrong. You might not be wrong. But if you're not at peace with the concept of I might be wrong, or I might not have all of the information, or I might not be seeing the entire landscape of what actually happened, right? Because you don't know. That conflict between you and somebody else may have been instigated by a third party who just wanted the drama or wanted to sow conflict for some other reason.
Or just did things and stuff happened sometimes.
So you might not have the full story. We have this bias also in our brains to believe that we have the full story, that no, I know what happened. I was there. You have a version of the story. It's like the old cliche says, there are 3 versions of every story, yours, mine, and the truth. We may never actually know the truth. We may be able to get close to it. We may be able to approximate it. But if we're not constantly striving to have more information coming in, we're never going to get to truth.
To that point, there have been so many opportunities where I have executed peacemaking in the past few years that came simply out of strife that was caused by me initially misinterpreting the situation and doing exactly that. I used the tool of discernment to look into it further, to try to understand from other perspectives, and to also just let go of the perceived slight that was in reality not, it was all in my head. But there was no intention of ill intent, or maybe a slight happened, but it wasn't malicious, or there was a third party trying to cause drama, or just their own actions that made a causal chain. But in any event, me letting go and discerning the situation helped to make peace, and also kept me from making bigger problems for my own life and those around me, because I would have then perpetrated drama and perpetrated slights or trying to right the wrong, giving into the darker sides of justice, believing that I was right, I guess you say righteous indignation, which is always a dangerous place.
As I like to remind people, righteousness is an internal state and not something that should be projected outside of yourself. I want to be righteous. I really shouldn't be acting righteously.
Yeah.
I should be doing what I feel is right. I should be acting from that place of what is, I believe, is the right way to act. When you start imposing, again, going back to that violence, that righteousness onto others, then problems ensue.
Yeah. It's like I kind of jokingly say, you may be one of those rare individuals who might be the hand of justice in a moment, but the minute you make that statement, I'm the hand of justice, probably stop. Actually, not probably. Do stop. Take inventory. Make peace, because odds are you're not. You're about to do a lot of harm.
Like we discussed in the Harvesting Peace episode, it's really important for us to realize there can be more than one aggrieved party in any action. Just because you feel that your aggrievement is justified doesn't mean that the other party's is not also, possibly for extremely different reasons. Or that there's no aggrieved party and everybody misunderstood the situation. This is, I feel, the heart of most perpetual conflicts, is that we get to this place where, no, I'm the hurt one here. You don't have the right to feel hurt. Wait, no. That is an act of violence. You are taking away somebody's agency to feel the way that they feel. And that's wrong. And we should not be perpetuating that act of violence. But we don't perceive that in the moment as an act of violence. No, I'm the one that's hurt here. No, my feelings are the ones that matter here. My hurt, my trauma, my pain is the most valid, as if such a thing exists, right? But we do often act out of that place and cause further harm because of it.
This is also where forgiveness and letting go comes in and becomes, once again, a handy tool, not only for healing in yourself, but in some of those moments, some of those peacemaking opportunities that present themselves, the other party may not be able to let go. They might not be at a point emotionally, mentally, where they can forgive. By taking that first step, by forgiving them of the slight, that is incredibly disarming. It also will put that seed in it'll plant the seed in their mind garden to forgive and to let go themselves, and will allow them to take that step.
So for those of you familiar with any of the stuff that I've written about God or with the works of Rabbi Rami Shapiro, you'll know the fondness for calling God Hamakom Chuitenu, the place of our aliveness. I really feel like that is one of the greatest ways to see God. God is our aliveness. God is the one life, as we say in Druidry. He's the one life that flows through all things. As St. Paul said, God is the one in whom we live, move, and have our being. That basic aliveness is why Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." Peacemaking is, at its core, one of the most alive things that we can do, because you have to be in the moment. You can't be living in the past. You can't be living in the future. You have to be living in the right here, in the right now. You have to be in that aliveness, in that moment, in that peace, that, as Thich Nhat Hanh said, that basic peace that is the ground of our being. That basic peace, that basic goodness, that basic compassion that is there when we just let go and let be, and we enter that mindful state of being that is always there. And that, yes, involves our interactions with others. Yes, that involves our ending conflicts with others. But peacemaking always has to start with ourselves. Are we trying to perpetuate the aggrievement, the harm? Because a lot of conflicts continue because, oh no, we need to get our own back first. We need to balance the score, which generally means I need to cause as much pain as I have felt caused to me. And, that is not a good way to live. It is not a good way to be. But it is often how we approach life. So peacemaking really does have to start internally. How am I feeling about this? What actually happened? Why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? What prejudices am I bringing into this? What prejudices did this give rise to inside of me? Because if we are not doing that honest accounting first, we will never be able to have actual peace talks, actual negotiations, actual interactions with others that will be able to bring that peace about. I like to go to the pop culture things. This is one of the most amazing things that happened in LA recently, that in the midst of the great rap beef of 2024 with Kendrick Lamar and Drake going after each other, as hard as they were, that in the midst of that, at the pop-out concert, Crips and Bloods and Pyro and peace was able to be made within the city, even if for a short time. I actually read an article that talked about how in the run-up to and for a while after the pop-out concert, the Juneteenth pop-out concert, crime rates in LA dropped. At least for a moment in time, they were able to find peace. In the midst of all this conflict and all this drama that was going on, one of the main things that Kendrick Lamar wanted to do in that was showed the unity of his town. And somehow, like, who knows what happened behind the scenes to make that possible. Watching a Crip blood walk down the stage while a blood is Crip walking down the stage and nothing happened.
It's miraculous.
That is an act of supreme peacemaking, and we may never know what happened behind the scenes to make that happen. But it is such a sign of hope that even for a moment, even for a little moment, peace could be brought between these groups. That's hope.
It also speaks to yet another tool of peacemaking. It's coupled with several things, but it is finding and speaking to the commonality between the two parties. That comes through education, that comes through awareness of other cultures and the position where the other party, aggrieved party, is in. But in that moment, Kendrick was able to speak to, they are all from this region. They got to all identify as a group together. It's just part of the human psyche, but yet again, every human likes to filter everything through their own personal experience. It is just filtered through their own personal experience. So finding what's common between the parties. I myself was able to strike peace between what is lovingly known as hill folk and the gay community. The hill folk are generally known for being against things that aren't of a, I guess you could say, fundamentalist Protestant persuasion. So they would be against non-traditional marriages and family units and stuff. But I was able to speak to the heart of the commonality of where both parties wanted to have a good life, wanted to be able to enjoy good drink, enjoy good food, have a good time. And through that commonality, peace was able to be brought about because they were able to see, oh, you're like me. I'm like you. Oh, okay. Instead of speaking to the differences.
We're going to be talking a lot about difference and unity and stuff in episodes coming up. But yeah, peacemaking really does begin within. It starts inside of us. And if we are wanting to see peace in the wider world, we first have to start making that peace internally, and then in our relationships, in our families, in our communities, and watch it spread. It is a ground up thing. It is not a top down thing. If the troubles would not have ended in Northern Ireland, in Ireland in general, if there wasn't a groundswell of people just wanting the violence to be over. If they had just written a treaty and signed it and said, we are at peace now, the violence would have continued. But there was a desire, a willingness to sacrifice, and a willingness to make peace. So I hope this really helped you get to the root of this. Again, this is a big topic and something we were probably going to revisit over and over and over again. This is really a great place to start. Where are you at war within, and how can you bring peace to yourself, to your family, and to your community? And also, just one last note, don't put it all on yourself. Not everybody here is going to magically wave a wand and cause peace to break out. I wish it were that simple.
Well, back to that free will. Peace is a choice, and it's up to each individual to choose peace. You can't make you cannot violate the other person's will to reach peace. They have to choose it. Now, they might be enticed into choosing it, but they still have to choose it.
Thank you so much for being here. As always, your support really helps to make this possible. You can go over to creationspath.com and join our Substack over there. We're going to be offering classes in the not too distant future, and those who have contributed will be able to get them first. You can also go to my Patreon and my Ko-fi. I am C. Dorset on both, and that goes to support everything that I do, including the art, the music, and the stories. And if you support over there, we're going to be giving out codes for the Substack to help people, so you don't have to give on multiple platforms for things, because I don't want that to be a thing. You can also find more resources and all of my spiritual writings over at wisdomscry.com. I'm also, if you go search for Creations Pass on social media, you'll find me. I'm creationspass.com over on Blue Sky, and I'm Creationspass on Threads and Instagram. Though I don't really use Instagram that much, but I do use Threads and Blue Sky a lot. Alrighty. Anything else before we go? The dog said no. All right. So, as always, we listen to nature in here, and may the life of the one spirit flow through you and bring you peace and help you to make peace in your life, in your home, and in your family. Blessings. Bye.
Bye.